numbered consecutively 1 through 11. Do you recall that at all?
When I accept the filing, I don't particularly look at the number of filings, and I only select those documents that are necessary to make sure they have those 4 to 5 documents.
What I'm going to hand to you is a copy of the petitions. Just to refresh your memory, there's page 11, and before, and then after that is what I want you to focus your attention on. Okay. After 11, there's no numeric number on with this page, this page, or the next page.
That is correct.
Correct. Does that look, those pages to you, does that look as they were handed to you besides my circle?
Yeah, that looks like it.
Do you have any way to reference which page numbers these are? They're unnumbered.
I can if they're not numbered.
But just to reiterate, there's no binding whatsoever to this petition?
None.
Okay. You made no changes to his petition forms whatsoever?
No, sir.
That's all I have for now.
Right, Mr. Carter, you'll have a chance to ask him questions about anything that Mr. Fyans asked him. If you have, I understand you may have additional questions, you'll want to make those questions during your portion of this one, okay?
So to just cover the basis of what he has asked, on the day of filing, you stated that all 5 candidates were there filing everything. And do you remember the order in which everybody filed?
Do I know the specific order?
Yes.
I believe I did ladies first, so I believe that was with Rosemary Long, filing for Brian Long. I believe it was Trevor Clapfelter, which was next. You were third, and then Brett Vaughn and J. Tim. I believe that was the order. But there's no recording of that, so I don't.
Actually, I filed last.
Okay.
What I was getting at is, I know that I filed last, and the only people that...
Hold on. You can only ask him questions, so
Okay.
when you want to testify, you'll do it on your portion.
Absolutely. So again, going back to that. The other question I have regarding that almost refers to your integrity.
Hold on.
Well, objection, that wasn't part of the
wasn't
direct examination, so
Okay, now
So-
so I'm trying to understand what questions I can ask right now.
so when you present your rebuttal, that's when you present your case. You can only ask
So
one
I
question.
can only ask pertaining to the simultaneous numbers and to the actual being clipped.
Right,
So
exactly.
those are the only questions that I can cover with Mr. Stratton right now.
Right now. You'll have
Okay.
the opportunity to ask those other questions later.
Well, yeah, I covered, they didn't exactly remember the order. I think that's everything that I got right
Okay,
now on
great.
that.
Okay.
I have a question. Go ahead, ask a question.
Absolutely.
Were your documents paper clipped together?
Yes, sir. And obviously I will get into more
Well,
of
yeah,
that
we'll
when I
let
have
you
my
testify to
strength.
that. Mr. Fyans, any rebuttal questions?
Yes, you stated that all these people in attendance,
Yes.
did everyone stay around while, Mr. Carter said he went last, did everybody stay, or did people file then leave?
I believe that Rose for Brian Long had left when she filed, but the others just stayed around.
The others did stay around, so,
Trevor Clapfelter, Brett
Trevor,
Vaughn, and J. Tim.
J10, okay. And they were witnesses to the filing of,
Yes, they were
Mr.
regular.
Carter.
We have a very small office.
Okay, that's all I have for, Mr. Stratton.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Mr. Fyans, do you have any other witnesses?
I actually would like to call, Brett Hahn.
Mr. Hunt, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you state your name for the record?
Brett Hahn.
And you heard all the testimony that was just presented by Mike Stratton and the question asked by Mr. Carter,
Yes,
correct? Were you present on the filing date, November 19th?
I was.
And you saw Mr. Carter file
Yes, he filed right after me.
right after you? Did you notice how his petitions were bound or not bound?
I saw him turn them in with, just loosely, just hand them right out of his binder to Mike Stratton.
So there's no paper clip?
I did not see one.
You didn't see a staple, or binder, or tape, or anything else you've heard me ask. That's all I have for him.
Mr. Carter, you'll have your opportunity to ask the questions related to Mr. Fyans' questions of Mr. Hahn.
The only questions, I remember this day very clearly, so I'm just gonna try to remember. As to, obviously it's a very small office, when they went up, people went up to file, I know that my back takes up most of that area, right there, in accordance to where was you standing?
To the right of you.
To the right of me? For one, and I'm sure I'll cover this when I get a chance to speak, it's hard to differentiate these things.
If you're addressing the board, you're not asking him questions, so it.
See, I'm having a hard time with this.
I know, and
I didn't go to school.
I promise you will get an opportunity to address that when you testify. I just want to make sure we get people in, because if you start testifying, then Mr. Fyans is going to get to ask you questions, and then it'll get very confusing about who's asking whom's questions. So for right now, make note of things that you may want to rebut with your own testimony and present those. You're doing fine, though.
I'm trying. Let's see. I have no further questions for that.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any rebuttal, Mr. Fyans?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I just want to clear. Are you going to have any questions for Mr. Hahn that are not related to what was just asked of him?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so, Mr. Hahn, please don't leave until this matter is concluded, okay? All right, sorry, Mr.
that's
Please
not a
proceed.
problem. One unique element for Mr. Carter's, our objection to Mr. Carter's petitions is that his nomination petitions, they're not all consecutively numbered. Under election code, they require that the pages be put in order and consecutive number. Again, that's part and parcel of keeping the integrity of the process and making sure that no clerks or anyone else amend those petitions. With Mr. Carter, his statement of candidacy indicates an address that is not in the voter registration. His nomination address says 106 Carter Lane, Springfield, Illinois. And I'm going to introduce two documents. They're property tax searches for Sangamon County. One for 106 Carter Lane, Sherman, one for 106 Carter Lane, Springfield. Both of them indicate there's no search results for that property.
Okay, perfect. So you presented two search results from the Sangamon County Parcel Search website, and you presented these to Mr. Carter. And Mr. Carter, you have no objections as to the veracity of these records?
You make me think of this.
Just the accurateness and the authenticity of them, not what they may. You'll be able to testify and challenge what they.
Yes.
Okay. And are you going to admit these?
Yes.
Okay. We will mark the one that shows a Springfield as Carter 1, and the one that shows, this will pop here. The one that shows Sherman, Carter 2. Okay, Mr. Pine, please proceed.
As well, already admitted the evidence is the Sangamon County Clerk's information on the voter history and confirmed voter address for Mr. Carter, which is supported by our argument. The certified voter registration address for Mr. Carter is 100 Carter Lane. And there's a voter history for that address, 100 Carter Lane. Also in the clerk's information, they did a search for 106 Carter Lane, and there's no confirmed voter registration for that address.
Did, in what search, did you say the same one here?
Yeah, well, it's not the same form, it's in the, I think it's in your records. Jason has it.
Yes. For the member.
Is it the same?
No, it is a voter registration inquiry based on address, and it returns a no results. Mr. Carter had an opportunity to see these. There's one as a web-based, and this looks like an internal system, and it shows address, number, street name, and then the
This is the
result.
website you have.
Yeah, yes. It came from the clerk's office.
County clerk.
Yes, county clerk's office.
And that's already been admitted into, agreed to, that's part of the record. So I'm not gonna ask for that to be moved in. Again, on the statement of candidacy, he affirms an address that is not, his registered voter address, nor is it on a parcel search. And the numbers of the pages aren't clearly numbered on his nomination petitions. Again, this goes to the election code to protect the integrity of the process, with it not being bound and the numbers enumerated there. Could be questions to how the petitions were formed or whether they were filed and kept in proper order. That's why the intent of the law is to protect. So with that, I'll rest and Mr. Carter continue.
Does the board have any questions about the arguments that Mr. Fyans has presented? All right, Mr. Carter, you're now, it's your opportunity to present your case.
Can I take a minute before we get started? Just a couple minutes, I have a few questions after that.
All right. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
We have 2 minute recess.
I get nervous around these guys, they make up lies, man. Incredible.
I couldn't agree more.
Figured out that, because he was for Gray. Artist. He's an employee. Represents the village. Don Gray. So what's he work for Gray?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Back in session, Mr. Carter.
because I know you're new to this, I'm gonna lay this out.
Okay.
What I would suggest is you present your evidence through any witnesses you may have, and then once you're done with witnesses, we'll swear you in and you can provide any of your own testimony, okay?
Okay, so basically we'll run down through this and I will, adopt the, argument, or how we talked about this earlier. Now, you gotta make me remember what we talked about here.
Yeah, so you
A
indicated.
lot of things today.
Opposing counsel, correct me if, or objector, correct me if I'm wrong, but you indicated that you would like to adopt your arguments as to address and binding that are in your motion to dismiss, so that you didn't have to rehash all of those.
Yes, and then I did state that we still would like to call.
Call
this-
Mike
Yeah.
as to the binding.
Yes.
Okay. So that's now all on the record. Any objections to that?
No,
Okay, that's,
that meets with what we agreed to.
okay. So, you understand what I'm saying, I understand what you're saying,
Yes.
let's try and make it work. All right.
So then, I guess, the way you said it is we're going to go ahead and start with the witnesses and the questions that I have as far as pertaining to the binding.
I'm not telling you have to do that, you certainly have control over your own case, but for
I'm
the
just
sake
trying to
of
make sure
keeping it
we're-
clear in your mind, I think you will find that beneficial.
So then I guess we would ask Mr. Stratton, since he's still.
Certainly. Mr. Stratton, if you could come over.
Mr. Stratton, how long have you been employed by the village as the administrator?
I started in about July of 2017.
What was your previous employment? Just-
Actually, I worked at Lowe's as a manager on North Side.
And throughout your dealings with, when did you start being the acting clerk?
Acting clerk was in March of 2018.
And then in reference to the binding, I know that prior, when we said that your character hadn't been in question in 25 years of working in public office or whatever, do you remember in approximately February of 13, basically, I just try to sum this up, is getting put in the hot seat for unauthorized payments of $2,600?
As much as people switch.
Well, my question, and what I'm trying to get the relevance is, I'm trying to get this across, and again, not an attorney, so I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this, is I actually have documentation questioning his integrity. I know that according to the conversation that we had, that apparently the documentation itself would be considered hearsay, but I'm asking Mr. Stratton to verify or remember these issues.
So, you would need to ask a question about an event or a date or something, and if, yeah, and I think and I don't think he's objecting to your question, he just wants it clarified so the question is clear when he answers.
So I'm just asking the question if Mr. Stratton remembers in approximately February in 2013 from the Park District, as he was the executive director, taking $2,600 in unauthorized payments.
Was that the question?
That would be the question.
No.
Okay. So then, I mean, so. I honestly, I do not want it to get in here and sit here and be a back and forth about characters and stuff like that. The questions that I want to ask you pertain to this, but I do not want to sit here and go through every one of them and try to either get a yes or no out of you. The only thing that I'm trying to establish is when you said earlier that there has never been a question of your integrity. How do I form this into a question? Is really?
I know you may not want to go through item by item or something, but I think that is, your questions
So the only way I
are to
can-
bring out facts, you just need to ask some questions about facts.
I am not gonna waste everybody's time and day. Hopefully the basis on all this is pretty cut and dry, so I am not gonna ask any more questions out of, well, actually, there are a couple more questions. Earlier you stated, how many documents come across your desk?
How many documents come across my desk? As a village?
Yes.
I can't tell you how many, there's lots.
So you don't recall everyone of how they're bound and how they're put together?
Of course not. How can I do that?
That's why I'm asking that. So, but
But I
particularly.
will say that, under the particular circumstances, if the procedures require that things be, provided in a certain fashion, then I would pay particular attention to those particular items, like the petition filings for this process. Because there are specific rules. There are no rules when I get mail and I open it up and I look at it. There are no rules in reference to POs that come across my desk.
Absolutely.
There are no rules about binding or anything else associated with any of those documents, but there are associated with this.
Absolutely.
Therefore, I follow that to the T.
But actually, just the question is, do you remember all of them?
So of course I could, I don't remember how
That was
many
the only
documents
question
passed.
I had. Other than that, I have no further questions.
Do you have any rebuttal
Yes,
questions?
yes, very quickly. Mr. Stratton, you just indicated that you don't recall every piece of paper that comes across your desk. That's correct.
That's correct.
These rules that are in the Illinois Election Code that you've been trained on, correct?
Yes, sir.
They're heightened scrutiny because of those election rules and that code. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's so, very much so.
And you've been in these trainings where they've talked about the scrutiny and the alert status on these documents, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So it would be easy for you to remember, particularly whether something was bound or not bound because of the scrutiny and heightened rules on those.
Because of the scrutiny, the heightened rules, absolutely.
Yeah. And they train you to pay attention to that
That's
when papers are filed. Is that accurate?
very much so, just for the purposes that we're here today.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any
One other question.
questions?
You say that you've been trained on this. You said, I'm trying to remember when you were trained on this.
Well, I can't remember the number of times I've been trained in regards to the rules associated with this.
So my
But-
curiosity would be then, the phone calls and conversations with Don Gray's office trying to understand what we're trying to do here today.
Not only about what we're trying to do, but before, pre-petition filing as well, and preparation for all of that.
So if you've been trained and you know how to do this, I'm confused on what you're saying.
I don't know what your question is.
My question is, if you've been trained and you have the knowledge, why are you seeking outside to try to find this out?
Oh, due to the nature of the legalities associated with these kind of things, I'm definitely gonna go on the outside and seek those experts who actually do it every single day.
Who trained him?
Other than-
All right, you've got no other questions of Mr. Stratton. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Stratton?
I have one question. Is there a checklist that's typically used for these, or what do you do?
The receipt form itself that was
Yeah.
created for this
Right.
purpose has boxes at the bottom. Those boxes indicate have they supplied the appropriate information as regard to the rules. Is there the oath, these statement of candidacy, petitions, and what have you, and then we check those off to ensure that those documents are in fact in that file
For each file?
for each one of things. And the receipts of record.
I've got it.
No further questions? Do you have any other
No.
evidence that you want to present, or
Yes.
your own testimony?
For my own, I have my own testimony, and I do have other evidence. I have no more further questions. for
Okay.
you. I am not gonna end up calling on that guy right now.
Okay. Sorry, just a quick, if you're not gonna call him back, is Ms. Jenkins gonna call Mr. Hahn? Do you have any reason to call Mr. Hahn? Well, let me ask this, is the objector gonna call Mr. Hahn?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So if he's not gonna call Mr. Hahn, are you going to call Mr. Hahn? Okay. Mr. Hahn, you may wanna stay, that's your choice, but we're releasing you to be able to go whenever you see fit at this point. Yes, if you're gonna testify, you'd like to swear you in, please.
Do you swear, excuse me, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Obviously, I would just like to go into the testimony as to the being bound. I know I touched base on, with Mr. Stratton of the integrity. This is something that I've always been worried about. from the start of this election. So in preparation to file my petition, before I even come up to Sherman, I made 2 identical copies of everything to make sure to cover my bases in case something got lost, in case something anything. I bound both of them together with paper clips. I brought them both to the office. I was the last one to file, and the only people that were in the room when I filed was Mr. Stratton and Mr. Clapfelter. Mr. Clapfelter was down to the right, playing on his cell phone, not even really paying attention to what I was doing. Me and Mr. Stratton, I come up with my binder, I carry all the time with me. I had both copies. I gave one copy to him. He took the paper clip off, started flipping through them to count how many petition sheets I have. Because when he is correct, when he said that there is a checklist, and I have the receipt here from what he got, from what the checklist was for the 14 sheets and all of that stuff. I don't know if at this time, did you want to try to?
You want to admit that into it?
I only have one copy of it.
We have,
Do you have, okay,
Okay.
okay.
So I just wanted
I've got your 14 sheets.
You don't have it?
I've got a copy.
Do you want to take a look at what he has, Mr. Fyans? See if you have any.
So,
He can give you a copy.
So I gave him an identical copy. Now, I don't know what happened with the paperclip or where it went or what happened, but I am testifying that there was a paperclip on there when I submitted my paperwork, because I had 2 identical copies, and I didn't want to get them mixed up, so I had them paperclipped separately. And that pretty much covers the paperclip issue. So, and as far as, I guess I need to touch on the next one is the numbered. Most of this is covered underneath our brief to dismiss. I know that, I can clearly see that the last 3 pages of my petition are not numbered. But that being said, there are still plenty of signatures, being the fact that it only requires 13 signatures to get on the ballot in the Village of Sherman. And there are 11 pages consecutively numbered, so that's 110 signatures to be put on the ballot. And pretty much covers that one. The address, I do have, too many pictures up here. I do have stuff to enter in as evidence. I have my driver's license.
I've got a copy up here already.
You guys already got a copy?
I got one, but they would probably answer more of these ones.
Do note, on the driver's license, it was issued the date of 12, 11, and 17. At that time, I filed to have my address changed to 106. I don't know why it didn't get voted on my registry, or changed on my registry. It's something I am taking up with the office down there, because I have been at 106 for over a year. Granted, now we're talking about the change of address from 100 Carter Lane to 106. The mailboxes are literally together. And then I also received mail at 104 Carter Lane, because that is the address for my business. Again, same mailbox. So for me to not notice a 0 and a 6 on my voter card, because I'm still registered to vote in the same place, nothing changes to that effect, so it was hard to notice. I do appreciate it being brought to my attention so I can get it fixed, and it has been done since then. But that's really,
I have a question.
absolutely.
You lived in the same place the whole time?
Yes.
And it was 100, now it's 106?
I live in a mobile home that's on that same, which is why I'd like to touch base on the parcel search that he did. There will be no parcel search for a 106 Carter. There is no parcel. It's on a piece of land down there, and there will be no record of that. So yes, the 100 Carter Lane is my family home. It's the home I grew up in. Now 106 is a mobile home that I live in now, and have been there for over a year, all again in the Village of Sherman. So I understandably don't really understand the argument here, but I think that's all I got to cover on that. Any other questions for that?
So you've lived at that address for a year?
Yes, ma'am. And then there weren't any other questions on that, was there? So then that pretty much covers everything that I got.
Mr. Fyans, since he provided some testimony, did you have any questions for Mr. Carter?
Yes, very briefly. We don't have any objection to his copy of his driver's license being entered into the record.
Good point. The checklist, you didn't have any objections to admitting that, so that would be Carter 3, and the driver's license would be Carter 4 on my records.
I just have a couple of quick follow-up questions to him.
Okay.
Mr. Carter, you said that you moved into your mobile home a year ago. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Do you have an approximate date, not a date certain?
I don't have a certain day. The closest date I can give you is my driver's license. I had utility bills, and if you'd like to see those, I'm more than happy to forward those on. I did not bring them with me today.
No, my question, so when you moved, you didn't change your voter registration address?
When I went down to the DMV to change the address on my license, I was given an opportunity to change my voter registration. I did check all those boxes on there, so I'm not exactly sure what happened to the fact that it did not get changed in my voter registration. The only thing that I do say is not seeing it, because I still get mail in that approximate location, and the difference of a 0 and a 6 doesn't change a whole lot. So that would be the reason that I didn't catch it, to make sure that the DMV carried on to what they were supposed to do, as is changing my address for the voter card.
So just to be clear, so you're
Yes.
saying that you changed your voter registration address at the time you changed your driver's license?
Yes, it was supposed to be done at that same time.
But it has, you understand that based on the documents presented, that your voter registration address does not reflect that change?
Yes. Because, like I said, one is hard to differentiate, noticing a 1 to a 6, coming to the same address, don't see it all the time. Like I said, I was glad they pointed it out so I could get it fixed.
But your allegation is that somehow the Secretary of State or the Driver Services didn't properly fill out that voter registration address?
Yes.
Do you have any evidence that they did, besides the fact it wasn't completed?
Besides the fact that it wasn't completed, I don't, because like I said, it happened over a year ago. At least a year ago.
No further questions?
Mr. Grant, do you have anything to add after that?
I do not.
I should have a question, just so I'm crystal clear. You check the box. I assume you check the box, or I assume you can check a box.
Right.
When you change your driver's license, it's my understanding that you can register to vote.
Yes.
You checked the box.
Yes.
And you thought you were done.
I did. I believe I was done. I never checked back into it, because again, I'm voting. If my address had changed where I go to vote, or who I vote for, it would definitely have thrown me, and I would have known to do that. So, but yes, I went down to the DMV, provided the documentation saying that I am a resident here, to get my license changed, and checked the box to have my voter registration changed.
Anything else? All right, anything else?
The question was?
No. All right. That will conclude your chief in case, or your case in chief, excuse me. Mr. Fyans has an opportunity for rebuttal, so chooses.
I'll just reiterate or highlight that he admitted that there's no numbers on the pages past 11, or any indication what numbers those are. There's no testimony otherwise.
Those 3 out, who cares?
I have no further questions.
All right, so I believe that concludes the portion for 3 and 4. We are now at 5 and 6.
Any other brief? I don't think we need to.
I don't think so either. I think just for the purposes of a clean record, Mr. Fyans is objector, and Ms. Jenkins and counsel for the board had a brief meeting during our recess in between the last 2 matters, and a similar conversation took place. Ms. Jenkins is going to adopt the arguments in her motion to dismiss. Mr. Fyans is going to adopt his arguments that he's previously made. They're slightly different. The date on the petitions and documents and the binding, with the exception that he will call Mr. Stratton again for his case in chief, and Ms. Jenkins will have her opportunity to cross and present her case in chief as well. I think that accurately reflects, and all parties agreed that they're okay with the county records as provided to the board. I don't think we had any other documents with Ms. Jenkins.
No.
I don't think so.
I don't know if she did.
Yeah, so I don't, okay. So I think that accurately reflects where the posture of this particular case.
I was just making sure she heard all that.
Did you hear all that? Were you comfortable with what I just relayed for the record?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it is
2018, it's 5 and 6.
correct. And Mr. Fyans, you can proceed with your case in chief.
All right, just to reiterate, we're, the board and the parties have adopted our earlier arguments. There's no concern in Ms. Jenkins' case is distinguishable between the two earlier cases on the address. And there's no question about the pages. So the only issue would be whether that we'll present here is Mr. Stratton again on the binding or lack thereof of the petition on November 19th. So I call Mr. Stratton again.
Mr. Stratton, you're still under oath?
Yes, sir.
Hi again. So on November 19th, we've heard this testimony before. Ms. Jenkins, did she come in and present her nominating petitions
Yes, she did come in a little later that morning.
later that morning? So she wasn't present with, you had earlier testified that Trevor Plattfelter, Brett Hahn, Jake Tim, Rosemary Long, Josh Carter, and I apologize if I missed somebody else, but they were all present earlier.
She was not present there at the time of the opening of the office in North Line.
Okay. When she presented her nominating petitions, who was present?
I believe Trevor Plattfelter was present, along with myself, obviously. Tracy Shaw, I believe, was present, and Ms. Jenkins. I believe Josh Carter may also have been present at that time.
Was Brett Hahn present?
Not that I recall. That was later in the morning.
Okay. When Ms. Jenkins presented her case, or her, not her case, her petitions, were they bound?
Ms. Jenkins had some bound and some not bound. The
Can you
two,
elaborate that?
yeah, I was going to. The economic interest statement, as required as a part of the filing, it was 2 pages. So obviously a photocopy had been made, and those were paper clipped together. The other documents, the nomination petitions, the statement of oath, loyalty oath, and the statement of candidacy were loosely bound. They were not bound by paperclip or any other form.
Okay. So those, so you were able to quickly differentiate that some were bound and some were not?
That is correct.
Okay. And the nomination petition forms that were supposed to be bound under the Illinois Election Code, they, like you testified earlier, no paperclip,
No paperclip.
no staple,
No staple.
no black binder, or big bound
No, sir.
clip, no other form of binding.
That is correct.
I rest.
All right. Ms. Jenkins, do you have any questions for Mr. Stratton?
Yes.
So you're saying that my petitions were not clipped to the economic interest form?
The only paperclip it was on, as I said earlier, was the economic interest statement, which was 2 pages, was paperclipped together. The other documents stated were not paperclipped or bound in any way.
I recall them being bound with that. Another statement you made, is it correct that you said Tracy Shaw was present?
I believe that is correct.
Okay, I have, both my receipt for filing as well as her receipt for filing. She wasn't present, just to clarify.
Hold on, you gotta ask some questions, you can't tell them things.
So was she present?
From what I
Based
recall,
on the times?
from what I recall, I thought she had been present.
Ms. Jenkins, are you wanting to have those 2 documents admitted into evidence?
Yes.
Okay. Can you share those with Mr. Fyans and see if he has any objections to those? No, I don't have objections. Okay. presented them to Mr. Stratton. Have you had an opportunity to review both of them?
Yes, these are receipts of filing for both Victoria Jenkins and Tracy Shaw with my signature, yes.
Okay. And were you wanting to ask him about the times on those documents? Is that what you were, sorry, I interrupted you. I want to make sure you had an opportunity to ask the questions that you wanted to ask.
Okay, the question is, mine was receipted at 8:42, and Tracy's was receipted at 8:52. And I just wanted to make clear that could Tracy have been present?
For over a 10-minute delay, certainly. She could have been present.
Okay, she could have been present.
That was the question you asked.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. We didn't formally do it, but I think it's clear, but she moved for admission of both of those. Does anyone have additional copies of that, so we can, I know the board has the receipts.
Okay.
We can figure that, we've got,
So let's do Ms. Shaw's receipt.
No, Ms. Jenkins.
Isn't it one Ms. Shaw's and one Ms.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Jenkins?
yeah, I don't have a copy of the front of it.
I think we have those.
We'll have to get a copy for Mr. Fyans before everyone leaves. Ms. Shaw's will then become, I apologize, this is gonna be a little confusing because of the way we did it. Ms. Shaw's will become Jenkins 1, and Ms. Jenkins will become Jenkins 2. Okay, so those are in the records clear. Any other questions for Mr. Stratton?
No.
Okay. Any rebuttal from Mr. Fyans? Does the board have any
I have a
questions?
question. Are you indicating that Ms. Shaw was there or not there?
She was not there.
She was not there.
No, I had, well, I'm not supposed to say
Yeah,
that.
we'll give you a chance to testify to that here in just a second.
I know it gets confusing.
Yes, you can ask Mr. Stratton.
No.
She has to be sworn.
She'll have to be
Okay.
sworn. That's why it'll get really confusing if we start asking questions of her. It's already confusing enough. If you have no rebuttal, Mr. Fyans, then we'll have Mr. Stratton step down as witness, and then Mr. Fyans can come back up and finish, or excuse me, yeah, Mr. Fyans can come back up and finish his case in chief. Is that all you had?
With us, with them adopting our earlier arguments, that's all we have to present, is
Okay.
everything else is put into the record.
Okay, so you can stay there. Sorry, I can check through that.
See, there we go again.
Make sure you're done. You're not done.
Okay. He is, so we have now finished the objector's portion of his case in chief. It is now Ms. Jenkins' turn to present her case in chief in support of her petitions. Ms. Jenkins, do you have any witnesses that you want to call?
I would like to call Tracy Shaw.
Okay.
Go ahead. Ms. Shaw?
I can't remember if we swear you in.
During my case.
So
I
you're,
was sworn in my
that's
case,
right.
but not hers.
So she's still under oath. Ms. Jenkins, please proceed with that, asking questions.
Were you present when my petition was filed?
I was not present for your petition. I showed up later and you were present for my petition. I was not here early because I had no desire to be in the lottery since it was just gonna be me and Trevor on the ballot.
And that's all I have.
All right.
I want to keep this clear in my mind, because what you're saying is that when you actually were there and put it, it's a timing thing for me. You filed
Yeah,
and was done, but
yeah.
you were still in the building when Ms. Shaw came in.
No, she was outside.
Okay,
I saw her outside.
Hold on, because this is gonna get really confusing, because then Mr. Fyans is gonna wanna ask questions of her. Can you ask Ms. Shaw maybe your questions about what she recalls as to them being there?
you were not present when Mrs. Jenkins actually filed,
I was not.
but Ms. Jenkins stayed when you filed.
Miss Jenkins was out in the parking lot when I pulled up.
And she was not in the building when you filed.
She was, the only people in the building when I filed was Mr. Glatfelter and Mr. Stratton.
I had thought you'd indicated in earlier testimony that Mrs. Jenkins was present when you filed.
She was. She was present when I filed. We're talking about when she filed right now. When she filed, I was not there.
Okay.
When
you
I filed,
she was in the building
She came into the building with me,
when you filed.
and Trevor was in there, and Stratton was in there. Yes.
So she was present when you filed,
When
and
I
you were
filed.
not there.
I
when
was
she
not
filed.
there that early for her. She was there early for the lottery. I was not.
Okay. I was just confused on,
Sure, very confusing, I get
So
it.
you went out to the parking lot and came back in later?
but you came back in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Understand. Thank you.
Do you have any more questions for Ms. Shaw after that? Okay. Do you have any questions for Ms. Shaw?
Just to clear, you're not a witness to her filing.
No.
All right,
Yeah,
for
okay.
this
That's
point,
fine.
that's
Okay.
it.
Because I was making the connection that, well, she, I understand now.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand.
All right.
Mike was saying I was present. I'm saying I was not present for her filing. That's why I
Yeah,
called.
and because I was,
Which is indicated by the date stamp.
yes,
On my receipt.
the important part of her filing was done well before you got there.
Way before.
Hold on a second, because I want to make sure that under oath or testifying, she's characterizing his testimony that was under oath. It's going to be completely confusing for the court reporter and for us.
Because of pronouns.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So I think her testimony is done, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. Let's get you out of the seat before this gets any worse.
Yes.
You have no other witnesses. Do you want to present any testimony?
My testimony is all covered in the brief that you were given early, or my comment and rebuttal to the charges on the receipt that or the papers that I got have been explained in the brief that I gave to you earlier.
Earlier this morning, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
May I ask one question of the objector? Is this the time to do it?
It depends on what your question is, because the motivations of the objector are not relevant. So if it's as to why or some fact about it, it doesn't matter. The only thing that is the substance of this hearing is the validity of the petitions.
Okay.
But hang on, you do wanna say that they were paperwork.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were,
No, we got that.
you still have an
I
option.
just
I wanna make
Yeah.
sure that she didn't, you know.
And that's where I got confused on who was there. and-
Right.
And now I know. Ms. Shaw was not there when it's done.
Okay.
The paper-
It's now your turn to present your facts.
Okay.
So let's swear you in, and then you can tell your side of the story. Does that work? All right. And I think everybody's blood sugar's doing.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of redoing every,
Okay.
you know.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. I recall the paper clips being on the entire stack of papers, so they would not be lost or shuffled or gotten out of order when I handed them to Mr. Stratton.
If that's your statement, I don't have any questions.
Okay, everything else has been discussed in the brief that you received earlier.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Fines, do you have any questions?
Not listening.
Okay.
Thank you.
The board, you don't have any questions? Okay. Rebuttal.
Very, very quickly, I know we bounced back and forth, and I think it'll be in the court transcript. My recollection of Mr. Stratton's statement was that he believed that Ms. Shaw was there, that he didn't state with certainty. His statement of certainty was whether the petitions were actually bound or not. That's it.
So you're just drawing
Just clear, the
attention to
characterization
what was
stated that he
around.
said it as a fact, affirmed that, but the statement was he believed that. Just clearing that up.
Unless the board has any questions for either of the parties in this one, I believe we can close the final hearing. Okay, I think there's some housekeeping matters that we need to address here. There was references to supplemental information. Are the parties that want to provide supplemental factual information or records at this time?
Other than what we've already got this morning.
Other than what we've gotten this morning, there were some. Okay, take a minute.
I don't believe there's any supplement on our end.
Not for Mr. Carter, not for Ms. Jenkins, not for Ms. Shaw? Okay, so we don't have to deal with supplemental factual information. Each of the candidates has filed a motion to strike or motion to dismiss. It is customary to allow the objector to respond to that before the board acts on it. Are there any objections in giving the objector until Monday morning at 8:30 to file a written response?
We're asking for time to be able to, for him to file.
Yeah, I need you all to come in here because I can't have one of you speaking for the other, each of your candidates, and you have to.
Short on the room.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I
I
apologize.
It would be my request that we have that documentation at least by the end of day tomorrow, so that we have time to review it. I mean,
Before Monday.
8:30 Monday, with the hearing being at noon, is just not enough time to even respond. And a lot of us work.
It's for her on Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what the time frame was from the objections being filed
It's 24 hours.
to us receiving them this morning. Would have been,
It's 24 hours.
when did the call went out Wednesday? When-
Tuesday evening at approximately 6:30, Mr. Stratton, Josh Carter, and myself met in the Village Hall office, and we were presented
With
with
the
the
call
call.
document.
I was not presented. I was working Tuesday night, so I came back up to the Village Hall after the meeting. The Village Hall was locked. You let me in. It was probably like 7:30, 7:45.
Well, Sunday knowledge was received.
Oh, 6:59,
The
6:59.
actual call is
The
dated,
actual call.
December 5th.
They're referencing when they.
I'm just answering his
question.
question.
Petitioned by us for personal service. Then the call letter you're referencing is what was emailed to them or otherwise applied to them, I believe, on the sheriff's office through service.
And it is dated December 5th for the actual call.
How much time are you requesting, Mr. Fyans?
Well, I'd like to file it by Monday morning, if possible.
And he's counsel, like he has, background we don't, so we need longer time than that. That would not be fair to us at all.
Ultimately, it's the boards, if you want to decision about timing for this one.
I think they ought to have some time to respond. How fast he can do it, I mean, I don't know the timing here, but they need to have some time.
We will be working from 8:30 to 11:30 and then here at noon.
That's a question. Can the meeting, is there a problem moving back the meeting? So if he's got it here by 8:30 on Monday, and we have a meeting later in the day, it gives them the day to do it.
I don't think there's a problem with moving the meeting back on that day.
I thought there was a certain time limit all of this had to be done. I'm just.
That's a good question.
Right,
I don't know
right.
what the answer is. We gotta make sure we do it, there's an election law that says we have to do it a certain way. I just make sure we follow it.
Monday,
They have time.
Monday is the 5th day.
Well, I
So
was-
as long as it concludes on Monday, we're not outside the 5th day. There is some support for that if the candidates all agree to additional time, I think there's probably some leeway to go outside that 5-day
So
period,
since-
but I'd have to look into that.
So since the meeting is in Monday on noon, if we say that, you know, we need to have what he has by Sunday at noon, it gives him over 24 hours to prepare that document, and then gives us exactly the same amount of time to be ready for it on Monday. I believe that would be fair.
That's reasonable. Especially if we serve each other by email, is that sufficient?
Right, email, yeah, email will be required, and I would ask that any emails be, and we'll get this information to the
Right.
chair and to me and to the objector.
So the plan would be is that the objector has until noon on Sunday
Right.
to provide you with
A copy of.
whatever it is he's going to do.
Right.
You will have 24 hours to get it to us. And then we will just read it at the meeting at noon.
I could do that, asked if we could do the, meeting in the evening on Monday. But I mean, that's still another, yeah. I think it might help everybody's schedule as well.
And the chamber gets to make the rules, and we're okay with those rules changing, if that's okay with the board.
Okay.
I think we got two things.
Well, we've got two things here. We want your responses to his
Right,
objections by noon on Monday.
Right.
You're asking to delay the meeting later in the day,
and that would give you all more time.
more time to read it, not at the meeting.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I believe that would be pretty fair.
I can do something else on Monday.
Same.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Does that change the, have to do one by phone?
It does.
Yeah.
So there we go, that helps there too.
You want to do it at 4 o'clock on Monday?
5 o'clock?
Do that.
I'd say that.
5 o'clock.
I say that.
I mean, I don't know.
Does that work?
For you guys?
Yeah, I can do 5.
Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. The objector has to get information to you and copy to us by Sunday noon. Your response has to be to us and the objector by Monday noon. And we'll have a 5 o'clock Monday meeting here.
Okay.
Do you have a record of all appropriate email addresses that this needs to go to?
Well, we're gonna have to get that when this meeting's over.
Yeah, when this concludes, we'll get a list of emails and we'll make copies of it so everyone has it. Does the board want any briefing on any particular matter? I think it's probably gonna be encompassed based on the motions, dismiss, and replies there too.
Yeah, I don't have any questions right now. I have not read the information received this morning. I will do that. And then I will email you. That will be, I will not be emailing you if I have questions.
Can I just ask a question to council?
Yes.
Is the board given, information on how to dissect the motion to dismiss from you so that they can understand the case law that was presented in that?
My expectation is that we will have legal counsel help us understand what the law should be.
Perfect.
Yes. And our job is to take a look at what the law says and act accordingly.
It has not been uncommon in other proceedings like this for boards to request proposed orders on each of those, whether or not to sustain and the reasons therefore. Does the board want proposed orders? Since this is going to be very compressed, it may decide based on one of those proposed orders to just adopt.
A proposed order, if I understand it correctly, is the document that he would, if it was the objector, that we sustain his objections. And if it is the petitioner, the respondent, to disallow those. So
Right,
what are
and
you
that's-
saying? Are you asking them
to propose what they think the right answer is for each of the objections. And then if the board agrees with one on either one of them, they could then choose to adopt one of the proposed orders on any given objection. The reason I say that is because we're gonna get this information, we're gonna process it. You're not gonna know how you're gonna decide. And so the more options you have to decide on come Monday evening, we're not gonna take a 2-hour recess to draft from whole cloth a written decision.
My thought is that is up to each of the parties. If they want to.
We'll allow it.
We will, if they have a directed order prepared for us to act on, that's helpful for us if we agree with it.
Right.
That will speed the process, so, but that's not a requirement.
Correct.
We will do our own due diligence, we'll prepare our own. However, if either party prepares one for us that we agree with,
Right.
that makes it cleaner and quicker, but that, it's not a requirement.
Do you want to put a deadline on those, like at noon on Monday, saying
Yeah.
final
Yeah.
deadline? Okay. So if any of the parties are so inclined, they may submit proposed orders by noon on Monday. There's no guarantee that any of those will be adopted, but it's just for the convenience of the board.
And not a requirement.
Right.
Jason, I have a question. The clerk in posting of notices and everything else, we had posted a notice on recess and then a reconvening meeting for Monday at noon. Two things. One is, you may want to address that we're not required to do it within 48 hours because of reconvening on that particular matter under Oklahoma. And number two is, because of the size of the crowd today, in order to accommodate seating, so I understand, should we change the location to maybe UCB Center on that particular day? Which will accommodate everyone for sitting with that purpose.
So what the recording secretary is bringing up is that we did a posting out of an overabundance of caution, since this is a reconvene meeting and we would have set it for a date and time certain. There's not a requirement to amend that, but again, out of an overabundance of caution and transparency, I think the best approach for the board would be to direct the recording secretary to post an amended agenda with the new date and time for the reconvene meeting, which is Monday at 5. And he is now asking whether or not this location is an adequate location based on attendance.
My thought is probably not an adequate location, however, there's no guarantee we can get that facility. So my thought is that we have it for here, however, if Mr. Stratton can obtain that facility, he won't be able to do that probably until Monday, when they open Monday.
I might be able to get a little bit before, okay, we'll see.
If it's changed, we'll know Monday morning, and we will post it on the website, post it on the bulletin board, and all of the parties involved will get emails. Does that conclude the hearing portion?
That should conclude the hearing portion. I would just ask that the parties stick around and make sure we have all exhibits agreed upon, clean, and make sure everyone has copies they need after we conclude.
On the agenda, you have Pam as Pam Long, and you kind of, you referred to it as Pam Long earlier.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
her name's Pam Gray.
My apologies.
Thank you.
So this portion is done. The hearings are done for now. We will recess eventually. We've got a couple other housekeeping issues to address. Let me get some things here. I think we've addressed all of the logistics for the hearings moving forward. So at this point, we can excuse the court reporter. And we'll move to the remaining portions of the agenda. So we are off the record now. Evidence is closed until and testimony is all closed until we get back to the hearings at the reconvened meeting. I'm gonna give her a minute just to. Right.
I was thinking, could we announce that just to make sure if that affects anybody's decision? Whether it's going to be-
Sorry?
At this point, could we just clarify that public comment.
Oh, yeah, public comment will still be held.
There'll be a
Based
public
on
comment.
anybody's decision to stay or leave.
Yeah, there'll be a public comment here in a few minutes. It's limited to 30 minutes, and each individual can have up to 3 minutes, so
So you don't need me for.
you're not needed for that. During portions of it.
Okay, and then I will be back. I was scheduled to come back on Monday, so I will be back. Can I
I
check?
hadn't
with you?
thought of that, yes.
Yeah, can I check with you to make sure that, what the location is?
Yes.
Okay, when I commented about affected parties, that would include you, if we need to have an interpreter, the respondents, and the objectors. We'll get emails.
Okay.
So, yes, you will get an email.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you need to get a card though. You will be contacted as to location. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Just the laptop.
It's just the black one. There's a black one.
Check to see if anybody wants to. Does anybody want to be added to the list to have public comment? I can take the first 10 names.
Mr. Mitchell?
I'd like to be added.
Oh,
And then there's another one.
Mr. Mitchell?
Mr. Mitchell, too.
I haven't just signed in.
You just put your name. It's good.
I don't have it. I don't have it.
Well, Mike. Yeah. Do it as
Which is 30 minutes. I see, so that gives you 10.
Right, everybody say your wants to speak.
It might be you can track of the 3 minutes.